Thank y'all. Thank y'all. It's really a tremendous privilege and honor for me to speak to ALEC today. It's also a great privilege for me to be on the same program as Dr. Laffer. I'm an old economics major from a small school there in Jackson, Mississippi. But I also tell you, when I have the opportunity to speak with a well-known economist, I'm reminded of a time when perhaps I'm not as successful as I thought or as I would like. You see, when I was at Millsaps, my sophomore year, I had not yet declared a major. Well, there were three others that were in the same boat, and one night we were sitting around the table, perhaps over cocktails, making a decision as to what we're going to major in. And as I look back on that meeting, I am reminded of the success that I have not achieved. You see, of those four individuals that decided that night to major in economics, one went to Ole Miss Law School and finished first in his class. One of us went to Harvard Law School and Stanford Business School. One of us went to Duke Business School, and I got a government job. Thank you, Steve, for those kind introductory remarks. You all should know that ALEC has a strong defender in Steve. We have this weekly syndicated columnist back home that suffice it to say is just a little bit liberal. And for the last 10 years, he's made a habit out of attacking Haley Barbour and Tate Reeves. I mean, literally, it was like 1 week he would write a negative article about Haley. The next week, he'd write a bad article about me. Well, about 3 months ago, he decided that he was going to attack ALEC. Because you see, Mr. Minor doesn't believe that legislators from around the country should gather to share ideas on how government can get out of the way so businesses can grow. Even more, he doesn't believe that legislators ought to listen to businessmen and women on ways to add jobs and raise the personal income of our constituents. But I want you to know that Steve, in the manner in which only he could do, wasted no time setting Mr. Minor straight, particularly on ALEC's purpose, when he said, and I quote, "The purpose is to act as a forum for lawmakers to share ideas, grow a stronger democracy, and help make government work more efficiently and more effectively." And I agree with Steve when he wrote, "This recipe for growth and effectiveness creates opportunity for all Mississippians and for all of your constituents as well." By legislators sharing ideas on the best ways to create a healthy economy, we bolster our states, which is only good for our nation as a whole, because successful states mean a successful United States. We have a strong delegation from Mississippi here this week. You heard a few of them with their cat calls earlier. But our delegation this week is led by two very important members of our legislature. First of all, Senator Buck Clark, our state delegation chairman. Senator Clark also serves as chairman of the Appropriations Committee in the Senate. When I appointed Chairman Clark to that chairmanship, it was thought to be a bit of a novel concept. You see, he's the only CPA in the Mississippi State Senate, and I appointed him to chair the Appropriations Committee. Speaker Gunn, I understand, had to fly back to Mississippi this morning, but he was here as well. He is our party's first leader of the House of Representatives since Reconstruction. He and I work very closely together on all legislation, and any items that I mentioned today would not have been possible without his leadership, his support, and quite frankly, his friendship. We also have from Mississippi here today, former senator, current mayor of his hometown, Senator Billy Hughes. Mayor Hughes was the chairman of ALEC during his time in the Mississippi State Senate, and I'm proud for him to be here today also. We in Mississippi are fortunate to have for the first time three conservative leaders in Governor Bryant, Speaker Gunn, and myself, who are working together for free market, limited government principles that grow our state's economy. You see, we share a political philosophy, a philosophy that believes government does not create jobs. Government's role is to create an environment which encourages the private sector to invest capital and create jobs. And we also share a belief that oftentimes the best action for us to take is to simply step aside and get out of the way and clear a path for business to be successful. With every bill that comes across my desk, and there's been about 3,000 a year for the last 2 years, that's the question we ask. Does this help the private sector grow our economy and create better and higher paying jobs? That's the approach we've tried in our state, and it's working. According to the Bureau of Economic Analysis, our GDP growth rate in 2012 was ranked 17th amongst all 50 states. Now, while 2.4% GDP growth is nothing to get excited about, our ranking relative to our peers does speak to how our pro-growth policies are positioning us for the future. ALEC and Dr. Laffer provide states with a good measure of where we are and where we need to go. In this year's Rich States, Poor States report, Mississippi did pretty well. We were given the 10th best economic outlook of all the states. There were 3 changes that we made to state law in 2012 and 2013 that we think will make our state even more competitive. Because being 10th is good, but it's not good enough. First, we took the workers' compensation law and made it fair again. The law should give both employees and employers equal footing in representing their interests. But over time in our state, court decisions had created an unbalanced playing field for companies and workers. So, working with our business community, we updated our workers' comp law to return that balance. We were ranked 9th in Dr. Laffer's report, and we hope this will only help move us towards number 1. Second, we gave businesses a tax break on our inventory. Mississippi was one of the few states that taxed what businesses had in the warehouse or on the shelves at the end of the year. Mississippi counties collected the tax, meaning any debate about eliminating it pitted local county supervisors against their legislators. So in 2012, we found a solution. We allowed the counties to collect the revenue and allow businesses to take a dollar-for-dollar tax credit on their state income taxes for those purposes. The bottom line is that this change in our tax code will lead to a $150 million tax cut for small businesses in our state once fully implemented. The third thing we did is we continue to evaluate ways to improve the legal climate in our state. Those of you who have been around ALEC for a long time know the strides we've made in tort reform in Mississippi. In fact, former Senator Charlie Ross was a leader in this organization, but also in our state Senate in getting that reform done. We've shed that judicial hellhole label by passing what the Wall Street Journal called, at the time, the most comprehensive tort reform package passed by any state. But we still have areas we can improve. 2 years ago, we attacked and we tackled the area of the Attorney General's office. You see, that office, everyone knows about the tobacco litigation, but that office for far too long was able to hire law firms to go out and seek large settlements from companies without any public transparency on how much those attorneys were getting paid or where the money was going. So we passed the Attorney General Sunshine Act. If the state goes after a large corporation in court and hires outside counsel to pursue the case, the AG must disclose the details of that contract. We also put a limit on how much outside counsel can earn when representing the state of Mississippi. The law, as Steve mentioned earlier, earned us the 2012 State Legislative Achievement Award from the U.S. Chamber's Legal Reform Institute. More importantly, I believe it's going to make for a more fair legal climate in Mississippi. I want to just briefly touch on the very important area of fiscal situation that we're in Mississippi, and particularly what we're seeing going on around the country. We're in better fiscal shape in our state than we've been in many, many years. We've stopped doing things like issuing long-term debt for short-term needs. We have a balanced budget with over 5% of our expected budget in our rainy day funds. We're only appropriating 98% of our anticipated revenues projected for the next fiscal year. But we still have to get our debt burden under control. I've been an advocate for doing that. In fact, 2 years ago, for the first time in anyone's memory, we didn't have a bond bill in Mississippi. There was no bonds for large requests, and there was no bonds for pet projects in anyone's district. The reaction in the media was so strong You would have thought that all roads and bridges, all universities and community colleges were going to crumble to dust the day the gavel fell, ending the session. But guess what? The year passed and the state survived. The legislature paid off or repealed almost $500 million in bonds and only issued $199 million for projects whose long-term benefits outweigh their short-term cost. And we paid cash for repairs that were traditionally bonded, like bridges and technology upgrades. One phrase that I despise, that we hear often in government, is the following: well, we've always done it that way. Have any of you ever heard that back home in government? When someone tells me that, my response is simple, and that's why we're in the mess we're in. But I do want to mention that I am concerned about the effects of Detroit's bankruptcy on borrowing. It's foolish for anyone, on a state or a local level, to laugh at the Motor City's troubles. When a city as large as Detroit files for bankruptcy, saying essentially we can't pay the bills anymore, that makes investors squeamish about lending money to cities, counties, and even states. It could potentially drive up the cost of borrowing for all of us, and therefore it is a problem for all of us, one we will have to watch develop over the next few months. We've done the work to strengthen Mississippi's business climate, but that alone cannot create a successful Mississippi. Without a workforce that can read, write, and show up for work every day, on time, no state can prosper. In ALEC's report card on American education, Mississippi earned education policy grade of a C-, and I'd say that's about right. They recognize steps we began taking last year towards school choice and accountability, though, and I'm convinced that our next report card is going to be significantly better. We adopt the A through F rating system for schools and erased the previous 7-tier program that meant nothing to parents and students. We took our first serious steps into school choice by allowing students with dyslexia to go to a specialty school that teaches those students how to learn in traditional class and returns them back to their local public school. Mississippi had never had true school choice before. We had a charter school bill that was written by the education establishment in such a way to ensure that no charter school would ever open in our state. And I will tell you, your organization, ALEC, gave that law a well-deserved F in the report card. But I'm happy to report that we passed a charter school bill in 2013 that, although was not as broad as I had fought for, it's a great start to true school choice in Mississippi. For the first time, public charter schools will be allowed to open in school districts rated D and F, and public charter schools can open in districts rated A, B, or C as long as the local school board does not block what parents demand. We are putting parents in charge in our state, and we're just getting started. This year, we also raised the bar on what we expect from our schools. Right now, barely 50% of Mississippi third graders can read at grade level and understand what they're reading. And we wonder why so many students are dropping out in the 9th grade. 50% of them never left the 3rd grade with a high probability for success. Because as you know, after the 3rd grade, you begin to read to learn, not simply learning to read. That's why our legislature this year created a 3rd grade gate, meaning a child will have to read proficiently in the 3rd grade before passing to the 4th. We will raise standards for kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grades as well. We are going to throw everything we have at those 4 years to make sure every Mississippian gets off to a great start in life. Because in our state, we're focused on reform, not simply throwing more money at a broken system. We know we can't have a strong business climate without a strong workforce, and we can't have a strong workforce without better education. It's a simple formula, but it's a formula that we must master. Rich states, poor states, and the report card on American education are great tools to measure where states are and how far they have to go. With support from groups like ALEC, I know we're going to be successful. I want to thank ALEC for giving me the opportunity for being here today, but more importantly, I want to thank ALEC for helping legislators craft laws that support the free market principles that will lead our states and ultimately our country to a brighter future. Thank y'all.